Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. If you are trying to evaluate whether real estate is the right career for you, wondering whether you are doing the right things to launch into quick success, or looking for tips and tools you can use today to become a more productive agent, this is your podcast. Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. I'm Meredith Fogel, and this is Season 4, Learning from Legends. Today, we have a guest with us, Kris Weaver, who not only runs a very successful team, but an entire real estate company, franchise of Sotheby's, and has 4 offices. On his team, 23 agents. Among his 4 offices, 80 agents, average about, I think, 575 transactions over the past couple of years. Huge volume, been licensed around the same amount of time that I have been since 1997. So has been through the market rise, the market burst, and then the re-rise back to where we are right now. So he's got so much to share. I'm really excited to have you here, Kris. And Kris, you are in the Southeast Virginia, Hampton Roads area, and coastal North Carolina too, right?
Yeah, that's right, Meredith. I think the cities that people are most familiar with are Virginia Beach and probably Williamsburg.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. It's so interesting. So there's also that piece that's unique, that you've got a few different jurisdictions that you cover, which is a little bit different from what many agents do in their businesses. So lots to learn from you today. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So let's dive in first to your origins in real estate. What was it that first made you think, maybe this is the career for me?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I started in real estate when I got out of college because I started a company off campus. I got tired of the cold weather. So pretty quickly I sold that company to another company that moved back down to where I went to high school in Virginia Beach. And really quickly I met 2 agents actually at a boat show. They had a Polaroid picture of a condo walking distance to the ocean front. This was back in the day when we had VA contracts, 2-page contract, and the commission to the agents was on the contract. Well, back in 1997, that commission was 6% to the buyer's agent. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's about what I make in about 3 months.
Wow.
And I had always had kind of an interest in real estate. And, I had asked them, I'm like, can you tell me a little bit about real estate business? And they're like, sure, come to our houseboat. So I thought that was a little unusual. So I came to their little tiny houseboat, talked to them about real estate, and then I proceeded to join their company, which was a 100% split company with no services, right? Yeah. My first 6 months in the business, I sold 0 houses really well. And then after that, I was wandering around the mall and I found a kiosk with those books that you can flip through and look at houses. And if you can remember back then, you couldn't find houses online. Right. There was really no way to look at homes other than literally drive by them, which you didn't know where to go because there was nothing online, or go into a real estate office. Mm-hmm. So anyway, suffice it to say, a lot of people stopped by this kiosk in the mall. And it allowed you an opportunity to engage them. It's like an always open house, if you can imagine. Yeah. And it worked really well. So I decided to join that team. And I sold 5 houses my first month. I was not getting 100% split, but I did sell 5 houses my first month and continued to sell maybe about 30 my first year in the business. So that's kind of how I got into the business, and it took it from there.
Okay, so I have to dig into this whole kiosk in the mall thing for a second. So is that where you met those first few leads that you sold homes to or for?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Meredith, it was fantastic. And it doesn't work today because the consumer has so many different ways that are, of course, easier, less, frictionless, to find houses or get in touch with an agent today. Right. And of course, that's online. But before all of that, this was literally the easiest way for a consumer in a non-committal way to engage a real estate agent, just while they're walking by the mall. And of course, we had books of, foreclosure properties and new construction. Mm-hmm. It was so easy to engage people in conversation. So I'd walk out after a 3 or 4 hour shift with sometimes 10 leads just from a 3 or 4 hour shift. I would occasionally leave the mall with people, go directly to show a house, and occasionally even just write a contract later on in the next hour or two.
So it was like the Zillow before Zillow existed, almost.
Is way better.
Right? Yeah.
It was great. It was great. So it was a great way to get started. Of course, back then when you had to negotiate a contract, you literally had to take the entire contract to the seller or the buyer, sit down with them. Every single movement that you did with the contract was a sit down. So
Yep.
that process took dramatically longer than it takes today. So, if you're selling 30 houses a year, that's you're pretty much maxed out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it was a good way to start when you're 19 years old. Can't complain that I did that for a few years.
For sure. It's so funny. It's like sounding like the old school agents, like, you guys don't know how easy you have it these days with technology, but it really is true. Sitting in people's living rooms. I mean, for those of you who are experienced agents or productive today, in a competitive offer situation, back when Kris and I started, you went with the paper contract to somebody's living room and waited with a whole bunch of other agents who you were competing with to be called into the kitchen to bow down to the seller and their agent and hope that you could adequately articulate the merits of the offer that you were about to present. It was a whole different thing. But
yeah, it was incredible. Everything took forever.
It really did. It really did. But I think it's so interesting to draw the comparison between that kind of kiosk and either a web lead or an online lead, or even like an open house, right? Like you've got this kind of brick and mortar, your storefront, almost like the kiosk is the open house. But what you did well and skillfully was engaged the prospect in conversation. And that's really what I think is the foundational piece that can make or break your ability to convert the lead is, going from salesy, aggressive, off-putting to engaging and helping the person see that there's a connection that would benefit them.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's everything. I mean, if you can't connect, build some rapport, I mean, you're just not going to get anywhere with anyone. And I'm sure, in my office, listening to my agents, and I'm sure you hear the same thing too, and you probably cringe when you hear it. And that's the, hi, I'm calling you back about the house you're looking for. How can I help you? And there's nothing there to connect with their inquiry. There's nothing there to try to build rapport. And of course, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to get into alignment with these people so that they'll want to like us and trust us and want to work with us.
Right. Do you think that that's something that an agent can learn through scripting, or do you think that kind of like trustability and likability is something that an agent needs to bring to be successful in the business?
Yeah, Meredith. I mean, I think a lot of it is mindset. I mean, you've got to be in the mindset that you really want to learn about these people and that you really want to help them. Of course, we both know that you can't approach real estate transactionally. If you approach it as a transaction, then that's exactly what you'll get if you're lucky, is a transaction, and then you won't get that repeat and referral business. So you really have to take an interest in them, put yourself in their shoes, be sympathetic to their situation. And then with that, you're going to find out what their hot buttons are, and you're really going to be able to connect.
Yeah. All right. So take us from that awesome first 5 transactions to building a team. What was that journey like, and what was the impetus for you to begin to build a team?
Yeah, so when I started in the business in 1997, for my first 8 to 9 years, I was working as a solo agent. And then during maybe years 7, 8, and 9, I started working with a personal assistant. But really, the desire to hand off clients, it's just like any other agent. I felt like, okay, I'm the best person for my clients. They're not going to want to work with anyone else other than me. And I think, we all kind of go through those motions of thinking, okay, it's got to be us, right? But the reality is, they want the promise that we provide, okay? So if they come to us, whether it be by our brand or by referral or whatever it is, they want the promise of great service, the promise of being able to work with someone that they can trust, and that they're going to get that delivered through us. So when we decide to delegate to someone else in our team, the client already assumes that they are going to be getting those things with our team member. So it takes a while to kind of wrap your mind around that, and that they really don't need us. And we're really as team leaders, we're not as important as we think. We need to kind of take ourselves down off that pedestal, and understand that our team members can provide that same level of service to our client. So that's, I think, one of the first things that you have to look at when you're looking at scalability and being able to move up. And then the other part, of course, is just investment. We're moving from the old way of doing it, where we're keeping most of the commission, right, on every deal. Our expenses are minimal, to now we're running a real business, right? And we're having to invest in it. And of course, it's very, very expensive to, as you well know, doing all the things that you need to do to grow a business, to provide leads, to provide branding and services, to your agents.
Yeah. And I know you invest a huge amount of resources and time into the agents you bring on. What do you look for in an agent that when you're evaluating somebody who's come to you, or that you've maybe met and you think maybe they have that X factor? What is it you look for?
Yeah, so we're pretty succinct in what we look for. So with our general part, so we have a total of 102 or 103 agents in our brokerage.
Wow.
The 80-some agents do about 900 transactions. And then our team of 23 do a little over 500 transactions. So the per person transaction ratio is obviously way, way higher in the team.
Yeah.
In the general brokerage, it's about 0.8 to 1 transaction per month. And then on the team, it's like 2 to 2.5 transactions per month.
Wow, that's great.
So that's kind of what we aim for. So in the team, we're looking for, if you know the DISC personality profile, D being dominant, I being the interactor, S being the supporter, and C being the conscientious, we're really looking for higher I's, lower S, low C, and a little bit of D. Now, that can kind of work both ways, because the best thing about that particular agent is they really need you and you really need them. They really need you because they're really, really good at talking. They're not as good at closing. They need some sales training. They need help with the paperwork and the organization and everything else. So the team is really a perfect environment for them. The D's are great too, because they're going to close the leads a little bit more effectively. They're going to be better at listing typically. But at the same time, if you've created, like we have, this very deep structure where we require meetings every single day, 3 of them are in the office per week, the other 2 are by Zoom, and there's just so much structure and accountability. For us, if you start getting into a higher D range, it just doesn't work. And then, of course, the S's and C's, I do know some team leaders that love working with their S's. For us, we really have a hard time getting those S's to deal with the rejection that comes with real estate. And you and I both know it's not all roses.
No, far from it.
Right. Yeah, you definitely have to, as they say, with a kiss enough frogs to get to a prince, and it's no different when you're talking to real estate leads, and you're trying to convert. You've got to talk to a lot of people. Some of them are really happy to talk to us, Meredith,
Right.
and some of them just aren't. So the S's and C's, they can go get over that, but we don't want to be there through that process. So we're really looking, and to be honest with you, it does kind of frustrate our recruiter a little bit. But we also, of course, have the general brokerage where if the agent is experienced, we will take them on. So our avatar, we have 2 different areas, and generally we can take on about 50% of people who are interested in real estate overall, and then the other 50% are good for other companies.
Okay, that's fair. That makes sense. And what is the structure of the people that you do bring on to be within your team? What is your team structure? What does the leadership look like? What does the administrative support look like? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go into how the team came about first.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the first 8 or 9 years, single agent and assistant. Back in 2007, 8, and 9, I had just arrived back from California. I had sold real estate out in Orange County. And I noticed in 2007 that things were just going, 2005 to 2006, things were just going totally out of control. I remember my last sale in Orange County was a kind of a busted up, it's kind of embarrassing, a busted up half duplex with no view, built in the early 70s. Minor updates, it was like 1,600 square feet. And this is, mind you, this was in the 2000s, and it was $1.2 million.
Oh my gosh.
It was basically a twin home
Wow.
I remember the garage door, the wood on it was falling apart. In California, you have those flip up doors.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was really looking at the market from an analytical position, and I could see that, okay, this is going to fall apart. So when I moved out to Virginia, I started phone calling all the banks, and no one wanted to work bank-owned business at that time. And there weren't that many banks that were ready yet, but lo and behold, a year or two later, my phone started ringing like crazy. And then by that point in time, the banks had already established their relationships with their agents. So when the market shifted, as you know, it was about 50-60% REO or distressed. And there were only about 40 agents out of the 7,000 agents in our market that were in that position. So that really was kind of the underpinnings of the team. Well, if you get 20 new bank-owned assignments in a week, you have to have a big administrative staff. So that's what created transaction coordination, field services, the guys that run out to our properties and check on them. So all those things that you have to manage that bank inventory, those were the initial admin positions for our team, for photography, marketing, field services, and all those guys. And that's and as we transitioned from being a bank-owned team to being a traditional team, then of course, we needed to add on to that sales management because now we're generating leads from those bank-owned properties, which believe it or not, we didn't for years. We just took all the properties.
Oh my gosh.
We just had so many listings. I mean, I 1 week we got 25 new listings.
Oh my gosh.
Which is a heap ton of work.
Yeah.
To do. But anyway, so much was coming in. We didn't focus on the sales, and we're like, okay, we need to shift because this market's going to shift. We need to focus in on the sales. So we started bringing on the agents, and then that brought on, a team leader. I managed the team for several years, and then I brought on an assistant team leader, and then a team leader, and then another assistant to go under that person. So today there's a team leader, there's an assistant to the team leader, and then there's the entire team of 23 agents. So I've essentially 2 people in management managing the 23 agents. And then, of course, I'm available occasionally for strategy questions, for sales questions, but they handle most of it.
That's fantastic. So I'm hearing 2 kind of resonant themes from you in this, what you've just talked about, which one is this kind of exceptional ability to predict what was coming and to get in front of it in a way that positioned you for opportunity. Which is that just like an inborn skill? Like how did you see what was on the other side of the bubble that the foreclosure market was coming in, on the other side of, needing to even just knowing what seats to fill in your business? How did you know that?
Yeah, I've just always been one of those guys that really, I started reading the Wall Street Journal and taking an avid interest in that when I was like 9.
Wow.
I just started looking at all the pieces a long time ago. And then it's one of those things, Meredith, you do it long enough and almost like a web, it just kind of starts to kind of come together. So if you just kind of keep your finger on the pulse with that stuff, then you kind of know to, make a left move when you get a right jab, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's brilliant. And then the other thing I'm hearing is you created the infrastructure and put the right people in place, it sounds like, before you grew or, took a step forward. You made sure you had a good, stable foundation. And is that similar how you knew that? Or did you study business in some part of your life? It's so brilliant.
So coaching. Coaching. I mean, coaching is a lot to do with it. I had done coaching, where you pay the little monthly fee and you get a little bit of coaching for many, many years before 2011, 2012. But I started, getting one of the big guys out there in 2011, 2012. And I remember at that point in time, it was $2,000 a month, which that was a lot.
Feels like a lot. Yeah.
That was a lot. But that coach worked on organizational, how to organize everything, how to manage everything. A lot of it was about that, the underpinnings of management and organizing the structure. So that really, really helped. And of course, that telegraphed into the other businesses. And then creating that structure really allowed a springboard to create all the other businesses. So once I finally got someone, as I mentioned earlier, who started managing the team full time, that's where all these other businesses started to take off, because I already had kind of the pieces that you need for all those businesses already in place with my management team and my admin team and my marketing team and everything else. So it's almost like once you build your team big enough, if you want to, and then you have someone to manage your team, it's almost like you have business in a box, if you will. And then you can just start adding businesses, which is exactly, what we did. But one thing I will mention, especially since I guess this is geared towards newer agents, is early on, I had the desire, because I'd always been in business from a very, very young age. I had a credit card terminal when I was 12, for instance,
Wow.
Early on in my real estate career, I wanted to kind of try everything and grab onto those shiny objects. And that, to be honest with you, really slowed me down. I really should have just focused in on my basic skills, my market knowledge, get good at prospecting, understand the contract really well, and stick to that, which I did. I for the first year and a half, I kind of like put in all this extra effort and other stuff where I should have just had reckless abandon focus on one single thing, and that's my real estate business, right? So once I did that, then I was really able to start taking off. And then you really want to perfect your craft, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of these people, they're new agents, they've been an agent for a year or two, and they're starting a team. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Right,
exactly. And you and I both know, as business owners, it doesn't make sense really to do that so early.
Right.
You really want to build your foundation first and then jump into doing that.
Right. And that's just the resonant message that I'm getting from you, is that foundational piece was so understood by you clearly, that was so important to have in place before you took the next step to do anything, which is, if the audience hears anything, hear that piece. So you mentioned lead generation. And before we started the podcast recording, you were telling me about one of your lead gen strategies that is specifically effective for listings, and that's radio ads. So I'm so interested to hear about. Tell us about, how are you advertising on the radio? What gave you that idea, and what does that campaign look like?
Yeah, so back in 2011, 2012, I decided to jump into radio advertising. And I'll tell you what, that's a difficult nut to crack, because when I first got in, of course, the sales guys, they, especially when it comes to radio, TV, any of those mass market mediums, they want to sell you something. And they'll tell you whatever you recorded sounds great, because they want that ad spend to start so they can start getting their commission right away. And they're not really looking at the longevity of if it works out for you. So, truth be told, for the first several months, I probably blew a lot of money, a lot. I mean, I would say even $50,000. But remember, we had 20 to 25 new listings coming in per week for a little while.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave the foundation of being able to play a little bit, if you will, and get it right. So anyway, long story short, we got it right. Getting it right basically means, in a nutshell, using I hate to use the term, but a gimmick. The gimmick that we use, and we still use to a certain degree today, is guaranteed sale. It works. Not as well in this market, because this market, you're guaranteed to sell.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in a normal market, it is a good message, and it does work. Does work pretty well. And it's pretty easy to set yourself up in a position where the contracts are there to protect you, and so that you're also in a position where if you do need to close on that property, you can close on it and make it happen. But you've got to have some sort of hook. You can't. I'll tell you what, Meredith, you can't jump on the radio and say, I'm amazing, and I've been in the business for 750 years, and I've sold 2.1 million homes, and that doesn't work. Or my photography is the best, my marketing is the best. That sort of thing. They expect to hear that, so they don't really see any differentiation, with it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Having a compelling reason to contact you is so important, and you've nailed that for sure. And that's on your website too, I noticed. That's really a message and a hook that you use effectively. What else have you done that is a solid lead generation strategy for you?
Well, I think our ISA team has really been a huge part of it. Now we outsource, almost our entire ISA team. I still have my ISA team lead. I used to have 7 or 8 ISAs in the office. And of course, with the market that you and I have both been handed, that can be a very expensive thing to operate, especially based on U.S. wages. So I took my best guy. He's become my ISA team leader. And then we hire all of our ISAs through a company called VOOV. And we have 7 ISAs with them calling for sale by owners, calling expireds. They're secondary on our buyers. So the buyer leads come in initially to the agents. They follow their scripts. And then if they're not able to convert within the first several days, then it moves to the ISAs. And then those stir around in the ISAs, and the ISAs, of course, generate appointments too. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the second line of defense on the buy side. Mm-hmm. And then all my seller leads go inbound to the ISAs for initial processing there. So last month, we did about 40% of all of our business came from the ISA team. Wow. So of course, we're thankful to have that. And of course, when you're paying, our price with VOOV is probably about 1/3, I think, somewhere between a half and a third of what the normal price would be for an ISA. So it works out. We get positive ROI. Yeah. Keeps the team humming. Yeah. And the great part too is sometimes your agents are more motivated some months than others. You probably have noticed that, but the leads keep coming in, right? The leads keep coming in. So the ISAs are a great backstop because they're simply motivated by the number of calls they make, the number of conversions. So it kind of keeps something moving in the background. And frankly, when the market starts to slow down, they're even more productive because then they can scoop out more expireds, they can scoop out more for sale by owners and generate even more listing opportunities. In fact, when the market's more normalized, ISAs are amazing at turning out listing opportunities.
Yeah. That is such a brilliant strategy. And VOOV is not only a company that you use, but it's a company you own, right?
Yeah, I'm one of the main owners of VOOV, and our specialties are administrative support, ISAs, and marketing. And we have a group of 100 people down in Nicaragua and growing. They're all in office. So that's something that's unique and different. That is.
And is that a company for anyone listening who's an experienced agent or could use help from a virtual assistant? Is that a company that's open to anyone to tap into?
Yeah, we specialize in small teams all the way up to large teams. Mm-hmm. We only work with single agents if they're up at at minimum about 50, 60 transactions or higher. Mm-hmm. But I would say our average client is doing 250 to 1,500 transactions.
Okay. Wow.
Somewhere in there.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about that piece for a second, which is your other businesses and ancillary services that you offer, which you sort of mentioned the whole business in a box thing, and you kind of apply that business or the foundations of it to these other businesses. What was the first thing that made you think, maybe I should differentiate a little bit into some other real estate related businesses?
Well, to be honest with you, once someone was able to step into the role and the shoes of managing my team, who I trust, that's where things just totally took off. Mm-hmm. And her name is Maria. I really appreciate everything she's done. She's done a really, really great job, at managing the team and continues to do so. But once your time is freed up, you already have an entrepreneurial mind. If you're in real estate, you've gotten to the point where you have a team of 10, 15, 20 agents and you're selling hundreds and hundreds of homes. You've already have that knack. You already have it already. So the only thing you need to add is time. But the other thing you need is people. You need the right people. Yeah. So after several years and this is why you don't really want to skip ahead, in the sequence of things. You can kind of make it happen faster, but you have to have your business for a while to have the people that you can identify who have certain talents and that you trust, right? Yeah. And they're generally going to be more in the admin group or, believe it or not, in the low sales side, because the top salespeople, they're already making tons of money, selling real estate. Mm-hmm. And obviously that needs to be their focus. Mm-hmm. But the other people, you look at, what are their organizational talents? How driven are they? How much do you trust them? For instance, the title company I have, she started at a lot of my people who run big companies. The title company, for instance, does 2,000 deals a year. So it's definitely not a small entity. Yeah. She started at the front desk for the real estate team.
Oh my gosh.
And then went to transaction coordination, and then went to short sale coordination, and then went into opening the title company together. And then that title company now does a ton of business that's not even in our market.
Wow.
So, yeah, so the majority of the business that company does doesn't even come from our company. It comes from other companies in the marketplace. So it's getting the time. Obviously, you have to have the resources, right? You already have the base foundation of business for these companies because you already churn out, 300, 400, 500, 600 transactions. So you already have enough to get them started so they make a little bit of money or maybe a lot. And then you've already got the people. And then it's just the leadership and the vision. You got to make sure you use the proper structure, give them the proper structure, and then things just start to take off.
Super impressive. And it's clearly the vision is the thing that you have that is most market, I think, in all the things that I've heard you talk about and say. And then this ability to tap into the resources and the knowledge. And I feel like, it's looking at your example, there's so much to draw from. And I'm sure there are people listening who are like, oh my gosh, I could never get to that level in my career. What would you say? And I can't believe we're almost out of time already. These always fly so fast. I have so many more things I could talk to you about. But what would you say to somebody coming in who looks at what you've done with your career and thinks, like, that's an exceptional human being. I could never do that. What piece of advice besides not skipping ahead, which I think is so brilliant, absolutely. What would you say?
I mean, you have to think about what drives you and what your goals are. And I think that, one thing that we didn't talk about, and I know this goes through your mind too, is you've got to be willing to make some sacrifices. You know what I mean? I think I talk to a lot of people today and they talk about their work-life balance, right? And I've got great work-life balance now. Okay. And it's amazing. I love the life I live, but it certainly wasn't always like that. I mean, I was first in, last out, the one at the office on Christmas Day when the client didn't show up because I'll take that one last lead and do it anyway.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Right. You've got to really have a good why or a good motivation behind it in order to put in all that effort, because as you're always going to get through that hard part first before you start to get to the payoff. And it's going to get harder before it gets easier. So you really have to have that first. And then you've got to build your core businesses. You remember, I was mentioning that I built this core group that allowed me to quote unquote have business in the box. Well, I built a group that was selling several hundred homes a year first before I did anything else. You know what I mean? And I see some people try to do it all at once, and they're really not doing any of it well, let alone have the time to put systems in place. So you really do have it is a methodical journey, but it's a fairly easy one, and of course a coach can help you.
Yeah. And I think having that big why is important, and clearly having the passion for what you're doing. And what you say is so true. Before we started recording too, Kris was telling me about the fact that you spend about half your time in Miami and half your time here, and you kind of like have this dual life kind of thing, work hard, play hard, right? But you've earned that. And I think for those listening who feel like, real estate looks like this glamorous thing that you can kind of do in your spare time or when you kind of want to, the people that are like Kris in the world that you're seeing an example, that's an example of years and decades of digging hard and being gritty and getting through those moments to earn the life that you have today. So congratulations. I mean, it's brilliant to watch, and I'm absolutely enthralled with everything that you do. And I cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing all of this today. Kris, how can people find you if they want to take advantage of any of your services or work with your team? What's the best way?
Sure. Two best ways, simply put, cell phone number. Cell phone is 757-339-5747. I take those text messages directly myself. Doesn't really take that much time. Or email. It's KW, like Kilo Whiskey, at Atlantic, SIR, it's like sir.com.
Awesome. Kris, thank you so much again for being here. Wealth of information and knowledge. I think people are going to listen to this podcast many, many times and take lots of notes. If you have questions for Kris, please reach out. You know where to find us. And thank you for listening. Kris, thanks again for being here. This has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. We'll see you next time. We are so grateful you joined us today. If you've benefited from the advice we share on the show, we hope you'll tune in to our next episode. Interested in learning more about my personal mentoring programs, our Career Kickstart course, or to pick up a copy of my book, Farming for Real Estate Agents, your step-by-step guide for becoming the go-to agent in your local market, visit www.meredithfogel.com and click the Resources tab. If you are curious about becoming part of the List Realty family of agents, go to the www.listrealty.com website and click Careers from the About Us page, or find me at the Meredith Fogel team on social media. Thank you for listening. This has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. We'll see you next time.